Beautiful. Thank you, Anthony, for accompanying us. I wanted to do the meditation first today. Normally I do it after, but I wanted you to have that experience so that you could feel what it is to be open to the divine. For as I contemplated this topic, it became clear to me that it isn't something that you can think about. Rather, it's something you have to feel. You have to feel it in every cell of your body. This is so dear to me that it's a difficult topic to talk about because it feels so deep and so intrinsically who I am, and it's inseparable from who I am. But for many people, it means many things. For me, it's a breath. It's a breath into knowing that I'm God, that I am not separate from you, that I am not separate from anything or anyone, but that I am one with everything. And when I breathe and remember, it's indeed an expansive, holy place to be. When I was talking with my daughter about this topic, she's very brilliant, I'll say that, and such a prophet. And she said to me, Mom, everything that shows up in our life is divine. The whole purpose of the divine is to show up in your life, to remind you who you are. So when you walk down the street and you encounter a beautiful tree, it's the divine saying, remember who you are. When you see that beautiful flower, or hear the lovely songbirds, or see the homeless person in the gutter, it's the divine saying, here I am. Remember me, and in me I see you, and in you I see me. And as I contemplated that idea, and that's divine too. Thank you. Like a buzzard to wake us up, in case anybody was still sleeping from the meditation. If we truly look at everything that happens as sacred and holy, and we truly recognize we are a part of that, how can we question anything? How can we say no? It's not meant to be. Years ago, I used to pray 12-step prayer of, I surrender all that I am and everything to you, God, today. And then bad stuff would happen, and I'd have to think, hey, I surrendered all that, so it must be okay. And in everything, I get to show up and remember who I am. And what a glory and beautiful privilege that is to show up and remember who we are. I love swimming. Back my friend here, she'll vouch for that. I met her, she's a lifeguard at the pool where I used to live. Every morning I'd show up there. And when I was a kid, I would walk for miles in Lethbridge to the nearest pool, and it was so heavenly to jump in every day, all summer long. When I was a teenager and I got my license, I would drive all the way to Park Lake from Lethbridge, which is quite a ways, and I would go swimming before the sun rose, just as the sun was coming up, all by myself in that big old lake. And it felt holy. And I recognized, looking back, I was trying to unburden myself. I was trying to release all the heaviness that came from my crazy, chaotic, alcoholic family. And when I would get in the water, I would feel weightless and unencumbered by the body, and the rantings in my mind would stop, and I'd just feel the sun on my shoulders, and the water enveloping me, softening me, and it was so healing. And that's how it is with the divine for me. It's like jumping in that pool, taking that dive into the center of my being, recognizing the softness, the ease that lives there. It's such a deep parallel for me. A friend of mine who's had a horrendous childhood recently told me that as a child, one time she prayed for God to save her from these horrible parents. And she felt this warmth, like, not unlike the water, whooshing through her, swirling around her. And she said she never felt anything like it. It felt like a warm hug. It felt like softness, comfort. And she said she never forgot it. And in fact, that one time got her through many, many hard days. And I thought, if one time experiencing that could get her through so much difficulty, what could we be if we could recognize it's accessible to us all the time? If it gave her the strength, just that one time, to be able to go through all that she went through, what could we do and go through if we could breathe that into us always? I have another friend, I have a few friends I get to tell stories about. She lives in Vancouver, also a lifeguard. And she's a precious soul, and she's been trying to connect to this divine and getting nowhere and frustrated. And one day she phoned me and she said, "It happened." I said, "Oh, like what happened?" She was sitting by the seawall meditating, and all of a sudden she felt it. She felt this well inside of her of unlimited love, of peace, of joy. And as she breathed it in, she said she thought about all the times she'd given blood at the blood bank. And how, she said, in all those times, I never once thought, I wonder if they're going to give my blood back. Because she knew she had within her an unlimited resource, her own source. She didn't need them to give it back. She didn't need anything from the outside, for it was all hers. And that's what she compared this feeling to, and I thought it was brilliant. Lately, our bodies also are clues to us about if we're open, if we're holding. Someone like Katie, who does all this body work, I'm sure, And I know for myself, lately I can feel in my neck and shoulders and here in my high heart, I could feel all this suffering. And that's what happens in the manifestation of shutting our doors to the divine. Because the suffering is physical, the resistance is energetic or spiritual. And so I've just recently been able to go back to the pool, and boy, what a beautiful treat that is. And I recognized, okay, and every day as I tried to unfurl my wings and reopen myself, and my daughter's getting messages for me saying, Mom, this is what you're supposed to do. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm doing. Stand in there, feel God, open your chest space, breathe, unfurl. And when I swim, I often say mantras. I am my I am presence, breathe. I am the divine flowing through me. I am divine abundance. I'm in the pool. People don't usually swim close to me, by the way, because they don't know what I'm uttering. And as I'm bringing that in, my body starts to unfurl and open, and I can feel the divine again. The suffering ceases when I remember to do that. When I don't, the suffering reminds me, you're closing in on yourself, blocking off the divine. So how do we remain open when things get tough? And Katie said an interesting thing, that sometimes she finds it's easier when things are going well to be open. But as I reflected, I actually thought the hardest periods in my life, I've been the closest to God. So man's adversities are God's opportunities. And that's certainly been true for me. Because it was like I had no choice. Because for instance, when I was a young single mom, on my own, no job, nothing, life was so hard, I knew that my plans weren't working. And so surrendering to God didn't seem that hard. And in fact, it brought me so much peace and serenity. And that sometimes it's actually been harder for me to remember to do it when I'm not in difficult times. You know, they say people pray a lot more when things are challenging. Yes. But the piece that I think is key, as I contemplated this, was I'm a good surrenderer. But there's this other thing about feeling the feelings that's not always so easy. So, and I can actually surrender without having to feel my feelings. And the feelings also shuts the door on the divine or opens it. Because how else can the divine get through other than through what we feel? And so if I disconnect from what I feel, I disconnect from my divine source. Because I'm disconnecting from myself. And what I feel is who I am. And therefore I must stay open and connected to that if I want to stay open and connected. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I recently, well this week, I had a hard week. I lost someone very dear to me through suicide. Someone took their life. I'm still trying to understand that. Young mother, 2 children. And, you know, as I contemplated that, I saw myself doing the pattern that is my norm. Something bad happens, I intellectually try to make sense of it. So I'm thinking in my head, how did this happen? Why did this happen? What's going to happen now? What can we do? my mind's going. I'm disconnected from the feelings because they're very big and they feel very overwhelming. So then, when I recognize, oh, I'm not feeling this, I know enough that I must stop and take that breath, because to get into my feelings is exactly the same process as getting into my divine. Take a breath, feel what's there. And I felt that. I felt it all to the depth. Her sorrow, her children's, her partners, her family. And I even felt her, because I am not separate from her. And then I felt back connected to myself. And I trust that it's all okay. I don't have to do anything the way my mind thought I better. And our mind can have us thinking we've got to do all kinds of things. And actually all I needed to do was feel my feelings. So that's very intricate in staying connected to the divine. You know, this expression, you gotta feel to heal, and you gotta feel to be connected to the divine. Did you know that the divine lives in the shadows of our lives as well? In the pain and the sorrow, and in the moment of that woman taking her life? Did you know the divine was present and part of that? I'm here to tell you it is. It lifts us out of the shadows, and it reminds us we are more than life. We are divine. My daughter, who's very, well, she's a prophet. She does readings for a living. That's her job. And 2 days before this, she phoned me and said, "Mom, did somebody pass?" I said, "No." And she said, "Oh, like, wait for it." I love those calls. And then she said, this woman had gone to see my daughter as well. And she'd given her a rock for me. And she said, "I have a rock for you from this woman." I said, "Okay." 2 days later, I saw my daughter, got the rock, looked up the rock, and it was a portal to the other side. And then I got a phone call. And I'm looking at this rock, thinking, anyone says we're not connected to all that is? And here I'm holding this portal to the other side. And instantly I could feel that essence of that person. That's the divine. It flows through her still to this moment, and it flows through me, and it flows through us. I thought of ways that help me, whether I'm in trying times or just regular times, to stay connected to the divine. And the first thing for me to do is stop trying to control everything. If you want to stop the divine, well, you know that thing, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Yes, if you want to disconnect from the divine, just start living your life from your will, without consideration. See what happens. I've tried it. There's a little suffering involved. Suffering is also divine because it reminds us, oh yes, I need to check back in and stop trying to control the universe. Our control, I found this quote and I loved it. Our true control lies in managing our own energy and being receptive to what unfolds in front of us at every single now moment, instead of trying to manipulate the reality. And in the AA Big Book, one of my favorite quotes, acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it's because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life, unacceptable to me. I can find no serenity until I accept the person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it's supposed to be at this moment. And that's where the holy meets the sad, right? Because how can we look at the situation that happened with my friend this week and take that quote and say, everything is exactly as it should be? That's finding the holy in the despair and the sadness, in the shadows of our lives. Another good way to stay connected to the divine is through nature. My husband always says that nature is God's real world. He doesn't think the rest of the world is real. And in some ways, it sort of is an illusion. But nature is the real world. In September, I was ill. My husband and I both were ill. And I was really sick. And I was coughing, I couldn't sleep, and I was just miserable. And one night, in the middle of the night, I went outside in my nightie, in my bare feet, and I raised my arms in the air and I said, I am presence, I am one with all that is, and I'm claiming health and wellness in my body. And then I felt my feet sink into the earth, and I felt the support of my mother. And I just asked her to receive any beliefs or conditioning that no longer served me, that were sustaining this illness. And I just breathed that in, and the wind was whipping. The sky was navy blue and like turquoise streaks. It was just beautiful. And I stood there for a long time. I'm so grateful. And then I was sharing this experience with this young couple that I counsel from Toronto. And they're like 25, 26. And the male, who, I just love this young man, he said to me, I can feel it. I can feel that as you're telling me, Janice. I can just feel what happened. And I said, you should try it for yourself. It's even more powerful. Which he did. Nature will always bring us back in its simplicity and its realness, right? Something else that helps me to stay connected is doing service projects. And I've shared lots about that in the past here, but 2 weeks ago I was sitting around a campfire with someone who was an entertainer his whole life. And he's like in his late 50s now, my age. I'm a little older. And he said, well, after years and years of being an entertainer, very successful, he writes satirical comedy songs and performs at big company things and had his own show on CBC Radio, won People's Choice Awards. He said he recognized every single day of his life was about serving himself. He said, all those years, I only served and thought about myself, my ego. Every day I was under so much pressure and stress. Are they gonna like me? Am I gonna write enough good material? Are they gonna laugh? And that kind of stress led him to alcoholism and a failed liver, which, you know, metaphysically makes a lot of sense, right? He said he laid there one night in such pain, and he said to God, either take me or find me a liver now. He said that night a 22-year-old young man took his own life, and this man was the recipient of his liver. Another holy moment. Since then, of course, his life is transformed, and it's very interesting because he feels he can feel energetically the essence of that. But he was saying, what am I going to do with my life now? Like, I don't know how to live. I've only ever lived in service to myself. So I told him about my philosophy of all my theater groups, all the teenagers I work with. I always say to them before they get on that stage, and I heard this from Wayne Dyer, help me to serve. Help me to serve. Don't worry about your hair, your makeup if you forget the words to the song. You recognize you have a gift to give. You get out there and you say, help me to serve. And then stay out of your own way. He became very emotional and cried. He said, I can't imagine what my life would be like if I did that. But he was actually willing and ready to try. Help me to serve. That's a really good way to stay connected to spirit. When I was going through my harshest times with my divorce and being a single mom, I was also teaching performing arts. And I'd be so depressed, and every day I would be crying and depressed all day, and then I'd go to teach my classes, and I'd be working with these children and teenagers doing musical theater. And by the end of the night, my whole being shifted. So this is the next piece, is do something creative. Using your own creative juice will also open you to the spirit. And I'm sure any of our songwriters here, musicians, in fact, I know musicians are a broody bunch, and that often they use it as a way to sort through their feelings, to express themselves. And they are in that moment of creation. Don't you just feel you're right in the center of the flow of divine, miraculous things? Yes. And it doesn't have to be music or painting a picture. You could be gardening. You could be sewing. You could be doing any number of things that just release that creative energy in you. The next one is praying from a place of power. And when we did our skit here on the founding mothers of unity, I really got to know Catherine Ponder, who was the queen of abundance. And the one thing that woman, because she's still alive in her 90s, and I listen to her every day now, she prays from a place of power. There's no denying she knows who she is, and she knows her own divine worth, and she owns that. And when we come from that place of power, we open ourselves to knowing. To say anything else is actually the insult to God, right? To say anything other than, I am a piece of that divine source, is to deny your own true worth, right? And the last one, which is my favorite, which I nag on a lot here, is just taking a breath. When I get disconnected, I just take that breath. And I always feel I'm just breathing God in, breathing God out. And soon God's breathing me. And I feel home. One single simple breath brings me home to the truth of who I am. My prayer is that you all remember who you are. and that you find your own ways to be connected and stay connected to this divine presence that flows through you. And as the Course in Miracles says, if you knew who walked beside you at all times on this path that you have chosen, you could never experience fear or doubt again. So